beat by something or other. It's a big sign. A big sign. This is on a corner of Charlie's property, which is the corner of the sign too. He built that sign as kind of a sentiment to the protesters, an apology, whatever you want. Charlie supports us 100% now and has turned that corner into a park in dedication to the people who, just exactly what the sign says, stand united for future generations. He had a problem confronting the idea of, my God, I'm breaking the law. You know, I don't, and I mean in his respect, I don't mean my God as in slang, I mean my God as in my God, I'm breaking the law. And he had to wrestle with that for a long time. So he spent money, he put up a sign, and that's an example of his individual involvement and the level of commitment that he can show. More signs. People get into comedy. This guy's a wood carver, I think, and he built this sign. And the arm in the middle with a black stick is representative of the police beating the horse, and the mushroom comes from our sighting commission. Our sighting commission chairman, Horacio, has been so crass to the rural people of America since day one of the sighting process. When we refused to call it a low-level nuclear waste facility and we just called it a dump, Horazio's comment in the New York papers was we were too stupid to spell facility. Now, that kind of it is, I mean, that's just flat rude. It's not only offensive, it's rude. And that has been the involvement of the sighting commission with our community since day one. The last comment he made, and he's made a number of them in between, but the last comment he made, or before this one, was the mushroom. The reason the guy's stepping on mushrooms, he said people in Allegheny County, all the managers in Allegheny County are like mushrooms. You know, they're kept in the dark and fed. And he put it in the paper. So what we did was we created buttons which said, Mushrooms Unite. Everybody runs around the county with a button on it that says, Mushrooms Unite. And we even sent one to him. One more slide. Horazio's reaction, by the way, to the elderly people in the road was exploitation of elderly people. How could you do that? Mrs. Landis, the 87-year-old lady I was talking about, taught at Harvard University for about 15 years with a PhD in chemistry. The man sitting next to her has a PhD in sociology. He's published about 7 books. And all the way down the line, you're talking about experts in their field, from dairy farmers to grandmothers. Every single person sitting there was an example of our society. And let me tell you, when those people got done with Horazio, like, oh, I'm 70, so I can no longer think. You know, is that what you're telling the people who vote for Mario Cuomo? You know, and they played with that. Another example of commitment was this sign. Now, the sign wasn't originally that way, and I can't even remember how the sign originally read now, but it was a really blatant sign indicating this man's displeasure at having to be dumped in his backyard. The state literally went to court over that man's sign because it was on Highway 17. People protesting, people doing all kinds of things, did not get as heavy and as quick a reaction as did this man's sign. So now this particular sign, which reads, Caution, proposed nuclear disaster, next 10 miles. A rating of New York project by Mario Cuomo, Governor, and Jay Dunkelberger, Director. That sign fell within the legal ramifications that he was allowed to put that sign up. So I don't know how gross the other one was. I didn't see it, but it shows you how little things can make the state freak out. All the protesting going on, all the articles going in the paper, one sign, all of a sudden they get worried because it's on a throughway where people come by and see it all the time. Advertising works. I just want to tell you, I took this picture. That's an eagle picture of me. I took this picture in Michigan when I was up there. And for Mark, the people in Michigan send their regards and join us in our battle. Go ahead. In Allegheny County, we think of the whole thing narrows down to 3 things. Now, you got to do this right or it ain't gonna come off. They come down to food, it comes down to our children, and it comes down to our did not inherit the land from our ancestors. We merely borrow it for just a few minutes from our children. Thank you all for your attention.
Y'all got any questions? Anything I can answer for you? About the way we do things, or why we do it a certain way, or, you know.
They tell us automatically if we block the road and immediately arrest them.
Okay, good. Boy, I'm glad you said that, because we were talking about that earlier. If you block the road, you will immediately be arrested. That's a point!
Get arrested. That's it.
Civil disobedience without arrest is absolutely nothing. It's a protest that maybe feeds your ego, but doesn't go past your county, doesn't go into the newspapers, doesn't get on the voting people who support the politicians you're against. So if you block the roads and they don't arrest you, fine. They didn't put a spade in your land that day. But if you block the roads and they do arrest you, that's the point. Now, I kind of look at that as a win-win situation, is the way we look at it now in G.N.A.T County. Our particular fight, by the way, got really centralized around the point of you can never, ever, no matter how much money, how much time, and how much effort you put into this, you as a state can never, ever set foot on this property without coming through all of it. All of it. Now, we have pulled out a lot of different, about 6 now. If, you know, it depends on how you do these things. But out of, Kevin, 6 times, how many times we have to police in on? 6? 5, 6? How many times police come in on? 6. We have had 139 people arrested. Now, that's a very small number compared to the numbers that we put on the road. But there's a reason for that. The way we go about it. I said before, we like everybody to be comfortable. We want nothing that's offensive or threatening to anyone to happen. So if we have a line, if we have a protest line, then let's say it's 9 or 10 people lined up. Then we just keep beating. They arrest one stands in. They arrest another, one stands in. Now they don't know how many of you there are. They don't know how many of you they've got to go through. If they come in and take everybody at once, you have a roadblock, further down the road, that kind of thing. That's how we solve the problem of forcing them into either arresting us, or if they won't do that, not touching the land. New York State, I think, is up to close to, I can't remember, 35 to 60 million or something like that. How much they spent so far? About 60? Yeah, I think, you know, there's always some pro and con to this. I think the anti-nukes figure is 60 million, and the state's figure is somewhere between 35 and 48 million. I mean, that kind of thing always goes on. How much did you really spend? Not that much. You know, we can always go back to the bank. So they have spent that amount of money, and they have yet to go into the land. And they're doing a signing process. Sir.
What happens when an idiot like Alfred Turner says that he doesn't need to get on the land to choose a site?
And we got the same thing. The State Siting Commission wanted to get on the land. They decided that they would, they had to so bad they had to have this injunction. There was a time crunch. They had to get this done by a certain date. So they had to have this injunction to arrest us so that they could get on the land. Then they decided they didn't need it.
One of the hard things about this is to know when you've been successful, okay? But the fact that they have said that they don't really need to get on the land proves 2 points. Number one, we've been successful and we've had an impact on it. The second thing it means is that we can actually show the public that this is not a technical issue. It doesn't matter whether they get on the land or not.
True.
Okay?
True.
What we're actually doing with that is we are actually educating the public. That's one of the purposes purposes for civil disobedience. One of the things that he would probably tell you is that if you get arrested, then one of the things that you have as your advantage is you get to go to court. Now, I know that sounds kind of strange, but if you don't have anything to lose and it's a commitment that you can make to go to court, number one, there are lots of things that can happen. Number one, they'll drop the charges. Okay? The courts can only handle so much because right now the governor is cutting our budget all across the state. I talked to a lawyer the other day and he told me that the courts are being cut back because they don't have the money to run. So if you crowd them up with 200 trials, what are they going to do? They're going to drop the charges on probably, 90% of them.
That's the experience that's what we're getting. A bunch of people get arrested, they immediately drop a bunch of the charges. I'm still under charges from the Allen site. We've had four arrest scenarios going since then. And I don't even know what's happened on the first charge, let alone the second, third, fourth. I mean, because you get so many things going into the court system that what are they going to do with it? Now, I mean, you absolutely, positively, if you're going to engage in this, you got to get some lawyer to sit down. Now, that doesn't mean you take guidance from the lawyer, but the lawyer needs to tell you, you must seek out, if I do this activity, what happens? Right. Okay? What happens? Oh, you get arrested for disorderly conduct, and the max charge is this, and the max jail term is this. That's what you risk. You need that kind of information before you go out and lay your body down. You have to know what the consequences of your actions are going to be. So you need that kind of data. But our experience has been, they don't want to mess with you. And if you get into court, you've got your form. That's what you're good for.
One thing we got to recognize is that we have some time, maybe, we don't know. I mean, you have to take it a day at a time. Every day that the state goes to court is a day that we may lose something that we have in place. So we have to pay fairly close attention to what's going on in the news. And I'll give you an example. I took these gentlemen out to eat tonight over at Henderson, and I happened to look at the Henderson paper. I haven't been reading the paper. Others of you may have been reading the paper. But I look at the paper and it says Granville County loses part of its strategic position. Its strategic position has been weak. And I said, well, what the hell's going on? So I read the story. I bought the newspaper and I read the story. And it turns out that Judge Hobgood has lifted his restraining order until the hearing Monday. Now we have other restraining orders in place right now which protect the land, people from trespassing on the land. But that's just an example of how things can change every day. And that's why that if we're going to do this, we have to have a commitment, number one, to stay on top of the news and to watch the sites every day. And we may be less likely to see them on the weekend, but I don't know about you, but I don't really know, that they're not willing to pay somebody overtime to come in on the weekend. No, so that's just, we as a community, not me personally, or not any group of people, but we as a community have to take care of this matter ourselves, and as he was pointing out, it's, everybody has ideas. Everybody here has ideas that are of merit. And you just have to decide what it is that you think that you can do, which fits in with the general scheme of things that can be effective. Nobody ever knows what's going to be effective. You really never know. There may be something that you wouldn't dream of in a million years being effective, but it may turn out to be the biggest thing that's been done so far. Like the land deal. That was a very effective item. It may not stop the site, but it gave us more publicity for $70,000 than we could have ever bought for $70,000. How much do you think prime time network news time costs? It's very expensive. And we got, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes of that coverage on national television on 2 or 3 different days. So that's just one example of something that starts out really small and turns into something really big. His county watch program that he mentioned, we've had lots of rumors of things happening, lots of people saying that this is going on, that that's going on. And that's what the county watch program that they're talking about addresses, is that you have a place where you can call and you can report something. Let's take, for example, the example of somebody being out on the site. One thing that you have to know is that in order to know what's going on, you have to know several things. Number one, you have to know who it is that was on the site. You have to know what kind of vehicle they were driving. You have to know what their license tag number is. You have to get all of the pertinent information. If you get a chance to talk to them, ask them for some ID. You know, those are the types of things you have to think about when you are investigating something that you think is not incorrect, which we all have the capability of doing as citizens. We don't have to have anybody's permission. We have to have permission to do something that's against the law. If we're not the sheriff, we can't go out and arrest somebody.
That's an air exercise.
Well, that's your individual decision. If you want to do that, and you're willing to take the consequences for doing it, then it's an action that you have decided to do. That's the whole point of this. It's individual decision of what you think should be done. I'm not going to support anything that's going to get anybody hurt. It's going to lead to destruction of property. That's going to in any way discredit us as a community. And we don't want to look less than dignified, but we can do lots of things within those parameters.
You know, there's like two people who get, or three, maybe lawyers do. The lawyers always get rich. There are two things that are going to get really rich in this fight. One is the telephone company, because everybody calling back and forth knew about what's going on, who shot John, all this stuff, right? And the other, at least for our county, was there in one day. There's a Kmart, a Radio Shack, a Super Sound, and some other store, all the way across the entire county. We don't have too many stores in our county. And there was a run on CD radios, and it took them like about 3 months to make up for the backlog. I mean, you're never going to find a county with more antennas whipping along than you'll ever see in Allegheny County. I got a CB in every one of my cars, on my house, and it's always on, so we communicate a lot by radio, and that way we save money on phone calls. Especially if you're not that far apart within the town, and you use the CBs to call somebody if you're out on the site. See? So you can stay out on the site and say, I see, whatever, and you don't have to run back to the telephone. You can tell them on the CB, and then they can do whatever they think appropriate or whatever's appropriate. Now we don't keep track of people. This makes a simpler thing to keep track of. See, you can tell I was a retired Army Sergeant. Good. I think about them things. Anybody else any questions for anything? Sir.
You made reference to time earlier, and I may have missed it. How long did you think you fight?
We are now, I guess, 2 years, 18 months for the main part of it. 1 year from the first act of civil disobedience. Now, the culmination of April 5th was that as the police walked up and they delayed, they started randomly arresting people. When they got to a certain point, they disavowed what they had set up with the protesters, and we call it making a run. And what they did is they marched the state officials up the road to get to the property. Now they'd already walked about 3 miles at this point, and they were going to hoof it another 2 or 3 miles so that this siting commission, this state siting commission, could go, we touched the land. Well, they started walking across the barricades, the police barricades that were set up. They just walked right over top of them, or not police barricades, our barricades. They didn't read an injunction, they didn't do anything, they just marched across and walked right into the crowd. So, I have this thing about horses. I just love horses. But I didn't have my horse up there. I wasn't there that day. I wasn't there. And they brought in a team of draft horses. Bull horses, big Belgians. And people got in the saddle on these Belgians and they walked down the road. And when the siting commission was like from about here to that wall, the protesters were here, the protesters parted and the horses came forward and then they just started going around in circles in front of the police. Now, they didn't walk in the police.